Good. Yeah. I know.
Stop recording and start over.
Anyway. All right. So we're gonna finish this up today. 6.4 equations involving inverse trig functions.
Oh yay!
It's pretty easy. It's like super easy actually. So I'm gonna go through and show you this, and if you know algebra, okay, or you're associated, or algebra was that guy that lived next door, you kind of know him, but you know didn't really have a relationship. But I'll show you. It's actually pretty easy.
Are we gonna have a part B?
Nope. Okay, so we're starting with an equation here. Y equals this. Okay, y equals this. So we're solving for x. Algebraically, that means get x by itself. Okay? So if I'm getting x by itself, it says where x is restricted to this interval. What does that interval right there say?
It has to be
between 0 and 90.
0 and 90, but what quadrant does that tell me?
1.
1. That's it. That's important. That's important right there. Okay? I need to know where my answers are going to be because I could find some of these on my unit circle. Okay? So from your unit circle, I need to know that quadrant 1 is positive. Okay? And eventually we're going to move our way around from most of this stuff. Okay, so I'm going to start with y equals 3 cosine of 2x. And we're going to try and get x by itself.
Do we divide the 3?
Yeah, very good. So start by dividing by 3 because we're trying to isolate my variable. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. Okay? So I get y over 3 is equal to cosine of 2x. Now, this next thing right here is something I taught you guys. When I'm actually doing this step, it changes from what is inside here to what it's equal to here. So I'm going to do the inverse. When I do the inverse, this angle portion from inside the cosine changes to whatever it's equal to. So these two switch, and it turns into the inverse. So my notation for this is now going to become, so it's going to switch these two. So it's going to be 2x is going to be equal to the inverse cosine of y over 3. Okay, this is actually the inverse step right here. So once I actually get the cosine, or whichever it is, by itself from here, I could actually do the inverse, and it switches these things. So once I switch that now, is x by itself yet? No. So what do I got to do?
Divide by 2.
Very good. So x is equal to, so if I leave it as over 2, isn't over 2 the same as 1/2?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to do the 1/2 because it matches your notes. The answer in your note says 1/2. So it's going to be 1/2 inverse cosine of y over 3. That's it.
That's the answer.
Wait. It's almost there. Hold on. There we go.
Oh.
So we leave it like that?
Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah, we're just solving for the other variable that it says
That's
to.
easy.
Oh.
Oh, we didn't make it.
Yeah, no. Like I said, this is just algebra. Leslie, if you want to come over here, there's many seats over here on this side that are open.
From the equation, y equals 3 cosine 2x. So if you have that, that's
Okay.
how you do that.
Questions?
The 3 comes.
Está muy fácil?
Yeah.
See? Okay. All right. Let's try the next example.
You dropped something.
Yes, I did. All right. So I'm going to rewrite this. So 2 arc sine is the same as, it's actually the same as what? Inverse, right? Inverse. It's just a different notation. It's a different way of writing it. So I'm just going to write it as inverse because I feel comfortable with that one. So inverse sine of x equals pi.
Where is?
What's wrong? Example 2, it's slide number 3 if you're looking on that.
It's on the front page.
Oh.
This arc. This means inverse.
Yeah, arc means inverse. Okay, it's the same thing. It's just another way of writing it. Okay, so now let's take a look. We're trying to get the x by itself, but the x is inside here, this angle for the sine, right? Okay, so I'm trying to isolate that. So what should I do now?
Divide by 2.
Very good. Divide by 2.
Yeah, so you sine pi over 2.
So inverse sine of x is equal to pi over 2.
So instead of inverse, we'll do
Yeah, it's still doing the inverse, but if you're doing the inverse of the inverse,
it's just regular.
it's regular, right? So if I say the opposite of the opposite,
Well, it's regular.
yeah, it's regular, okay? All right, so now at the, like she was saying, so I'm going to do the inverse of the inverse, so it's going to change it. It does the same step. Same step. So now it's going to turn into regular sine. So it's going to be, let's see, it's going to be
Pi over 2.
x equals sine of pi over 2. But now for this one right here, because sine pi over 2, it's something on my unit circle.
Yeah.
So this is actually something I could do and find this one. So I'm looking for an x value for this one right here. So sine at pi over 2, we know that pi over 2 is directly on the top.
Sine, the y value is 1.
1, so x equals 1.
Oh, so if we're able to solve it.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's not. Never mind. I thought you were asking the cosine.
No. That's it. If you're able to solve it, you solve it. And some of these you can, some of these you can't. Okay, so the other one we could not. So if we look at it, we could not here because we don't know what this is, right? I still have a variable in this. So I don't know what the y is. If I had all numbers here, I could probably find it. Okay, so don't worry about it. And let's go with example 3. Okay, this one looks a lot more confusing than what it is. Exact same steps though. Inverse cosine of x equals inverse sine 1/2. Okay, what are we trying to get by itself?
S.
Okay, so this rule, the right here, here's my x, and the same rule applies. I'm trying to get x by itself. To get this out, I just switch them, right? I
Yeah.
do the inverse, and this time, all of this is going to go on the inside now. All of that goes in the inside, so now it's going to become x equals
Cosine and
cosine. No. Remember? Because if I'm switching this, if I'm doing the inverse of the inverse to get the x out here, right? It becomes regular cosine. I have to change that to regular cosine. Of inverse sine of 1/2.
And that's it.
Almost.
no.
We did this problem in 6.1. So this inverse sine 1/2,
You could solve that.
I could solve this, right? I could solve this. This right here says this is my angle. This piece right here is my angle. So if inverse sine is 1/2, I know that sine is what over what?
Y over R.
Y over r. So my y value is,
1,
my r value is,
2.
and my x value is, it's going to be rad 3, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to do Pythagorean theorem with this, and I come up with rad 3. Okay, Pythagorean theorem, I'm going to come up with rad 3. Okay? So, now, given this information right here, what is the cosine given this information that I got from here?
Rad 3 over 2.
So cosine is rad 3 over 2. So x equals rad 3 over 2.
Yay.
Questions?
Huh?
Yes.
Where'd you get rad 3 over 2 again?
Oh, okay, see this right here?
Uh-huh.
Sine is y over r, right? Okay, so I'm going to use Pythagorean theorem with y and r. So I have x squared plus 1 squared equals 2 squared. So x squared plus 1 equals 4.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Subtract, so I get x squared is 3, x equals plus or minus rad 3, and we're dealing with only the positive here.
Okay.
So it's going to be rad 3, so that's where I get that.
I'm a little confused because it says, what about, we just like ignored the inverse on sine, or?
No, we didn't invert. Okay, so now when I do the inverse right here, so if I open up the notes for 6.1, when I have inverse sine, this is actually an angle. Okay, this is an angle. It's representing some angle. Okay, so from here, I have to get something from there. So let's take a look. Okay, this is actually an angle on my unit circle, and it's saying, where is sine 1/2? Okay, this just so happened to be on the unit circle, so that's what I'm asking you.
Pi over 6.
At pi over 6. So sine is, this is representing pi over 6, right?
Oh my goodness.
That's pi over 6. But now, it's asking for the cosine at that, which is
Square root 3 over 2.
rad 3 over 2. And that's where we get that from, okay? Does that make sense? You know, a lot of times this is not on my unit circle. That's why I went straight to this. Instead of saying, hey, where is sine? You know, it's pi over 6, and then we find it out from there. Okay, but yes, you can find it from the unit circle. Other questions? Nope. Okay, that's it.
We're darkly.
Yep.
Yay.
So tomorrow we're going to start the review for the exam.